All right, let's dive into a story that asks a really powerful question. What happens when the invincible hero just completely breaks down? We're not just going to recap Iron Man 3. We're going to really dig into the trauma, the identity crisis, and what it actually means to be the guy in the suit.
You'd think after saving all of New York from an alien army, Tony Stark would be feeling pretty good, right? Well, he's not. Not even close. In fact, he's falling apart. This was a huge deal because it was one of the first times a massive superhero movie dared to say the biggest battle isn't with some alien, it's the one inside the hero's own head. So what's left when you strip the iron away from the man?
So, our story kicks off not with a big explosion, but with the quiet hum of anxiety. We find Tony Stark, the genius billionaire we all know, totally unraveling. The war in New York might be over, but for him, the real battle, the one against his own post-traumatic stress, is just getting started.
To really get what's going on, you have to understand these two moments in time. Way back in '99, you've got peak, cocky Tony Stark blowing off this scientist, Aldrich Killian, without a second thought. An act of arrogance he completely forgets. Now, fast forward to 2012. The thing that haunts him now isn't some old mistake. It's the terrifying memory of flying through that wormhole. The past he forgot and the trauma he can't forget, they're about to collide. Big time.
This is not the Tony Stark we're used to. He's a prisoner in his own mind. He can't sleep, and when he is awake, he's either having these awful panic attacks or he's obsessively building suit after suit after suit. And all that armor? It's not for the next big fight. It's him desperately trying to build a physical shield to protect him from his own memories.
So right when Tony is at his absolute lowest, a brand new threat appears. But here's the kicker. This isn't just some random bad guy. This is a direct result of the man Tony used to be. The past he so casually ignored is coming back for revenge. Hey, remember that scientist Tony left hanging on a rooftop? Well, this is him now. Aldrich Killian has completely reinvented himself. He's not the overlooked, nerdy guy anymore. Now he's this incredibly smooth, confident, and, well, dangerous visionary. He didn't just heal his body, he weaponized the whole idea of human improvement.
And the tech behind all this is something called Extremis. It was actually developed by Maya Hansen, yep, the other scientist from that same party in 1999. On paper, it's a miracle. It can literally rewrite your DNA and regrow limbs. But, and it's a huge but, it's super unstable. If your body rejects it, you don't just die, you detonate. You become a human bomb. It's the perfect theme for this story, right? A tool made for healing gets turned into a weapon of mass destruction.
Now, while Killian is working in the shadows, the face of terror that the world sees is this guy, the Mandarin. He's this mysterious, scary leader who starts taking credit for a string of bombings that nobody can trace. What the world doesn't know is that these bombs are actually the unstable extremist soldiers just exploding. He's weaponizing fear itself.
Then, things get personal. One of these attacks puts his friend and security chief, Happy Hogan, into a coma, and Tony just snaps. Full of rage and feeling totally helpless, he does something incredibly reckless. He goes on live TV, calls out the Mandarin, and then gives the entire world his home address.
The response is immediate, and it is brutal. Attack helicopters show up at his Malibu mansion and just obliterate it. In a split second, in the middle of all that chaos, Tony makes a selfless call. He sends his suit to protect Pepper, leaving himself exposed. In an instant, it's all gone. The house, the tech, everything. The whole thing crumbles into the ocean, and Tony gets dragged down to the bottom, broken and all alone.
And this is where the real story starts. Everything is stripped away. We finally get to see the man behind the armor. So who is Tony Stark when he has nothing left but his own brilliant and broken mind?
As far as the world knows, Tony Stark is dead. But what really happened is his suit, running on the fumes of an old flight plan, flew his unconscious body all the way to a tiny town in Tennessee and then died. He wakes up, alone, in the snow, with a busted suit, no money, no tools, and yeah, still having those awful panic attacks.
But this is where we see the real Tony Stark. He teams up with a smart kid named Harley and gets to work. He starts piecing it all together, figuring out the bombs are actually people, and he's not in a billion-dollar lab anymore. He's in a cold garage, hitting up the local hardware store to build DIY gadgets to fight super soldiers. It just proves his brain was always the real superpower. So then comes this absolutely brilliant twist. Tony tracks down the Mandarin's hideout, ready for the fight of his life, only to find out the world's most feared terrorist is a drunk, out-of-work British actor named Trevor Slattery. The whole thing was a performance, a total fraud cooked up by Killian to create the perfect distraction.
With the truth finally out, everything changes. Tony's not just trying to survive anymore. Now, he's on the offensive. He knows who the real enemy is, and he is officially coming for him.
And Killian's real plan is way bigger than anyone thought. He's not just a terrorist, he's trying to pull off a coup. He's kidnapped the president and plans to execute him on live TV, all while framing the Mandarin. The goal? To install the vice president who's secretly working with him as a puppet ruler.
And this leads to one of the greatest rescue scenes ever. Killian's goons blow a hole in Air Force One, and 13 people get sucked out into open air. Tony's only got one suit, so what does he do? He dives after them and, in mid-air, coordinates them into a human chain. It's incredible. He saves every single one of them, only for his suit to get smashed by a truck moments later. So once again, right before the final battle, he's left with nothing.
And so it all comes down to this, the final battle. Everyone converges on this huge shipyard where Killian is holding the president. It's just Tony and his friend Rhodey, completely outnumbered, completely outgunned. But Tony, well, he's got one last trick up his sleeve.
He gives the command and the sky just fills with Iron Man suits, dozens of them. Remember all those armors he was building because of his anxiety? Well, in this amazing twist, his trauma literally becomes his army. The Iron Legion arrives and we get this epic showdown between his automated suits and Killian's extremist-powered soldiers.
But the final blow, the thing that wins the day, doesn't come from a suit of armor. See, Killian had injected Pepper with extremists to use as leverage. He thought he was creating a damsel in distress, but he accidentally created a hero. When it looks like she's killed in an explosion, she actually survives, empowered by the very thing meant to control her. She comes back with superpowers and takes Killian out herself.
So with the battle over, Tony starts cleaning house, and I mean his whole life. He triggers something called the Clean Slate Protocol and destroys his entire Iron Legion as a promise to Pepper. Then he actually figures out how to stabilize extremists to cure her. And finally, he goes through with the one thing he's been avoiding for years. He has the surgery to remove the shrapnel from his chest.
And that means, for the first time since he was trapped in that cave, he no longer needs an arc reactor to live. In this incredibly powerful moment, he just tosses his old one into the ocean. This isn't him quitting being Iron Man, it's him finally accepting that the arc reactor, the suit, they were like a cocoon. The real strength was always the man inside.
And this brings everything full circle to his final, powerful declaration. The first time he said those words, "I am Iron Man," it was pure arrogance. Now he says them with a complete understanding of who he is. The suit doesn't make him a hero. Tony Stark is the hero. He is Iron Man, with or without the armor.
And the perfect punchline to this whole journey. It turns out this entire story, this whole deep, therapeutic session where he unpacks all his trauma, he's been telling it to his buddy Bruce Banner, who has been asleep for pretty much the whole thing. It's the perfect, hilarious ending for a man who finally found some peace.